Hi, everyone. Walt Rakowich here again. As most of you know, I'm the former Chief Executive Officer of Prologis, my favorite company, and the author of Transfluence, a book about the opportunity that we all have to make a transformative influence on the lives of those that we serve. I'm back for another live chat today with some of the most thoughtful voices guiding leaders to be more human and more effective at what you do. And I'm joined today by Deanna Mulligan. Deanna has an amazing background. She is the former CEO of Guardian Life Insurance Company, a board member at Vanguard, the American Council of Life Insurers, the Partnership for New York City, the Economic Club of New York, the Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose, and the Bruce Museum. She also serves as a member of the Advisory Council at the Stanford Graduate Business School, or School of Business, I should say, where she obtained her MBA, and also a director on the board of Arch Capital. Fortune named her one of the 50 most powerful women in business 5 times. Most recently, she is CEO of Purposeful and an author of a book called Higher Purpose: How Smart Companies Can Close the Skills Gap. It's an excellent book about workforce skills challenges and the importance of investing in people. Deanna, great to have you on today.
Great to be here with you today, Walt. And I'm so excited that you had me on your show, both for me to talk about my book and so I can give a few reactions to yours. It's a terrific book.
Oh, well,
Thanks for writing it. We're book friends here, and this is my book, Higher Purpose.
Well, as you know, Deanna, they are a labor of love.
That's right.
It doesn't happen overnight. That's for sure. But thank you. I appreciate the plug. And man, I'll tell you, it's just great to have you on. You've had, I mean, an amazing career. It's not too often I rattle off that many unbelievable accolades that someone has accomplished in their career. And you know, you've been pretty vocal about the importance of people in an organization. That's why I love having you on today. We're going to talk about people. We'll get to that. But first, I want to just talk about you real briefly. You know, we are all influenced by the people in our lives that we come in contact with. And so I'd like to find out, either as you grew up or most recently, who are some of those people in your life that perhaps influenced you to become the person that you are?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for that very gracious introduction. And I just wanted to say, no one does it alone, right? So behind all of those accomplishments are a whole team of people who helped me. And I'd like to say thank you to all of them first. But then going back, I think, as for many people, my parents were the biggest influence on me in terms of expecting a lot, expecting, hard work, service to others, optimism, thinking about the future, delayed gratification, and all of those things, helped me to put in place the background that got me to where I am. So my parents, my family, my early teachers are a huge influence, obviously. And then many people along the way. I was very fortunate throughout my career to have many people who not only mentored me, but also sponsored me and really believed in me and pushed me to the next level. And sometimes, saw more in me than I might have seen in myself. So yes, I agree. People are really important. And that's one of the reasons and you've been the same way in your book, have been so vocal about mentoring people and helping people in our organizations develop into the best they can be, because it's a little bit like throwing a stone in water, right? It ripples out. That impact ripples out to people whom you will never see and don't know.
Isn't that the truth? I have to tell you, when you and I did our pre-event on Thursday, I got an email message from a really good friend of mine in Denver. His name is Dave Keller, and he said, "Oh, I used to work at Guardian. She is fantastic," right? And you just never know who you're touching, right? You just never know. And a person in your position over the years have touched many, many people. So Just so you know, you have a big fan out there in Denver, Colorado.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for everything you did for Guardian.
All right. So I read your book, Higher Purpose, literally in 2 days. I don't typically read a book in 2 days. I'll be honest. I mean, I loved it. And so first, let me just say, I think it's really well written. It's obviously written by someone who's very knowledgeable. And I found myself saying yes to many things in it. But second, I think you did a really good job of framing the issue of rapid change in the workplace. And we all see it. We're beginning to see it more. And, obviously due to technological advances and other things. But before we talk about that issue, about how we address it, at least, I want to talk about the issue itself. You say in your book, and I'll quote, "Some occupational categories might disappear, but many more will simply evolve, requiring new sets of skills over time and providing new opportunities for workers. At the same time, automation displaces some jobs, it's going to create others." So there's a lot of people wigged out about this, AI and automation, right? And you acknowledge there's a problem, no question about it, but you seem optimistic, or perhaps not as concerned that automation is just going to put us all out of work. And I've heard people, really educated people, say it's going to, our lives are going to completely change and we're not going to have jobs and all that stuff. So you're less concerned about that. I think you're saying more, it's just going to change and we need to change with it. But why is it that you're as optimistic about it as you are?
Well, Walt, I wrote this book pre-COVID, but and I believe that then. But if you look at what's happened in the last year, since we've all been working from home, I've heard it said that we've had 10 years of digitization advancement in 1 year. And I think that's true in terms of the number of things that are being done remotely. If you think about all the industries that have changed significantly in the last year, medicine, retail, education, it's, government, I was just on a town hall meeting that was all completely online, and it's, the town government's been running online for a year. Things that were unthinkable a year ago are now digitized. And we have, unfortunately, had tremendous loss of work in some areas in the, restaurant, retail, airline, travel in general, frontline, unfortunately, a number of frontline workers. But at the same time, new jobs are being created. So I read recently that one of the hottest jobs right now is video production. And it's no surprise, right? Because look at us. We wouldn't have probably been doing this way a year ago. And the other thing that's come up is jobs requiring empathy, creativity, flexibility, the ability to teach people new skills. Those are some of the hot jobs right now, according to LinkedIn. And it's because we're in such a period of rapid change. And while we can learn some things from technology, certainly online learning is another big category. A lot of what's helping us through change is other people, teaching, creating, designing, leading, but doing it virtually. So there's an example right there of many jobs going away, new jobs being created, and people and technology working together in different ways in just one short year to create something new, a new environment. And I think you'll see that continue even after more people are vaccinated, more people start going back to work. Maybe let's hope, get the virus a little bit more under control. All of these forces have been unleashed and they're not going away.
Right. And so, you spend a lot of time in your book talking about solutions. Mm-hmm. And solutions, I think, if you really add it up, are educational institutions, it's government, it's business, it's industry. How can all of these organizations partner together? That was the crux of the book, mm-hmm. and the hope of the book, I think, that I got out of it. So I'm on the board, as you know, at Penn State University, and I'm on the long range planning committee there. And we are just, pulling our hairs out, trying to think, how does the university, how do colleges fit into this whole thing? you know? And so it's front and center in my mind. So you say that our next generation system should be based on four sets of principles. So let's touch on each individually, because I think they're, go a little bit deeper on each. They're actually pretty cool. The first one is, you say that education can't stop when you walk across a graduation stage. What does that mean?
Well, if you think about it, we just had a conversation about all the new things we've all had to learn in the last year. We didn't learn any of these things in school, right? Not in high school, not in undergrad, not in graduate school. We had to learn them on the fly, and there's going to be a lot more of that going forward. So McKinsey, for example, did a study and said 375 million jobs globally are going to change in the next 10 years. And that seems reasonable. And 375 million is a big number, but when you think globally, jobs are going to significantly change. But 75 million of those are going to go unfilled because there won't be people with the skills if we continue on our current path. And that seems to make sense too, right? So we're going to have to retrain some of the people who work for us now, right? Or people in our institutions, because there just aren't people out there. There aren't enough with the skills we need. The world is changing too rapidly. So what that means is that whatever skills you graduate with from whatever institution, they're going to be obsolete in probably 5 to 10 years. Now, thinking, not all the skills, obviously, but some of the, what you might think of core job skills, technical skills, are just going to continue to change.
And do you think universities, colleges need to retool and change, the current curriculum that they offer? Or is it just always changing and you're always catching up to something that's going to be different in a couple of years anyway?
Well, it's often been said, I think, that one of the benefits of a liberal arts degree is you learn how to learn. And I do think universities, but all schools, right, have to continually develop this learning mindset in their students. Is what you're learning now is great, but you're going to need to continue to learn, and to instill a love of learning and this attitude of continuous learning, I think, is going to be really important. And as to what schools can do now, I mean, at Guardian, we worked very closely with community colleges in our areas. And at first, it started out that we were mentoring students and providing money for curriculum and financial planning for students. But in the end, we started hiring the graduates of community colleges because we found that they were very motivated, and the training that they had fit jobs we had. We didn't necessarily need to require a 4-year degree. And we also partnered in some cases with community colleges to develop curriculum that would be useful to us specifically and help their graduates get hired. And I think that community colleges, as an example, are a tremendous resource for companies. If they don't have a lot of money to spend on training, don't have a big budget, a lot of the practical skills can be found there. In terms of, universities and higher learning, I think they're going to need to think about what older students or returning students might need. And can they offer more certificate programs, more online programs for people who might have graduated but want to come back now and learn new skills?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the second thing you say is that students need to experience to succeed in the workplace. So bringing the workplace almost into the classroom, or vice versa. So can you speak a little bit about that too?
Well, I think in some cases the United States is behind some of our, and you would know about this, well, because you work there, is behind some of our colleagues in Europe, for example, in providing apprenticeships. And you're nodding your head, yes.
I am, yes.
I give the example in my book of Chicago, where there's a whole ecosystem of community colleges and large companies working together and providing internships for students. And it's modeled on the European model, and it's worked really well. So I think we could do more of that in the US. An example of that at the secondary school level is the IBM P-Tech schools, and you're maybe familiar with them as well. Stan Litow, who helped create those schools for IBM, has a book coming out soon about P-Tech, but there are more than 230 P-Tech schools around the world, and they are an example of local public high schools cooperating with, in some cases, local community colleges and local businesses to give students internships while they're still in high school, to also have them take courses that would allow them to earn an associate's degree while they're still in high school. So in essence, 5 years of high school and graduating with an associate's degree and enough experience to go be placed in a job that's, a good job that earns them, livable wage. And that's, 1 year after when they would normally be graduating from high school. So there's an example, right, of businesses, government, education, all cooperating with a really good outcome.
Yeah. I think you started to touch on this third one, and that is the candidates bring more than a degree to the table, right? Reimagining what the diploma looks like, continuous learning, I assume. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that too, how that will change.
Well, I know you've heard of the credentials movement, and increasingly companies are hiring people who have credentials as opposed to diplomas. And the Business Roundtable, which is an organization of all the leading, as you know, all the leading CEOs in the country, has a whole workforce development committee, and there are 80 companies, large companies on that committee that have committed to hiring people who have credentials and who are working together to try to standardize credentials and develop a credentials engine, so that companies could look at credentials the way they look at a bachelor's degree or a high school diploma and know, what they're getting. But essentially, more and more, you see people, particularly the tech companies, putting courses online and saying, if you graduate, if you take these 4, 5, 6 courses, you'll get a certificate and allows you to come interview with us. And if you, make it through the interview, we'll hire you whether you have a college degree or not. So I think that credentials are a very big trend that's coming our way.
And it'd be like a passport or something with blockchain or some such that it would actually, it could follow you, and,
Yes.
and people could look you up and know exactly what you're credentialed to do.
Yes. And it's happening. It's happening already in Silicon Valley and a few other places.
Interesting. And then the fourth thing, and the one that's probably nearest and dearest to my heart, is you say business leaders need to invest deeply in their employees. We need to put people first, you say. Can you speak about that too?
Yes, well, I know this is a big theme in your book, but it's, and it's also a little bit common sense, right? If you invest in your people, they'll be loyal to you. Unfortunately, in my career at Guardian, I experienced 2 tragedies. One, Superstorm Sandy, not long after I became CEO. And then, of course, the pandemic hit New York City, where our headquarters were very hard. Toward the end of my CEO tenure, I say I came in a hurricane and went out in a pandemic. But in both cases, the loyalty of our employees, their desire to stay on purpose, which for us is serving our policyholders and taking care of each other in our communities, just inspired terrific creativity that allowed us in both cases, despite really difficult conditions. During Superstorm Sandy, we left on a Friday and weren't allowed back in our building for 9 months. We had 5 feet of water wash through our building unexpectedly, and we had problems underneath the street in front of us, so we had no power and no internet for 9 months. And our employees just developed creative solutions to get everything done. We weren't quite as prepared for that event as I would have liked to be. So I said, this is never going to happen again. And we focused really hard on becoming a company who could work where we could all work from anywhere, right? Just being not dependent on physical location, which came in obviously very handy during the pandemic when we were able to kind of overnight switch to total remote work. But through all of that, it was really the employees' desire to deliver and to not let our customers down that made Guardian a success. And I strongly believe the reason they were so invested in making it happen for our customers is they knew the leadership team was very invested in them. You know, we wanted to make sure that they were not exposed, you know, to the virus unnecessarily. We got them out of, you know, buildings and into remote work quickly. We, you know, provided a lot of support for remote work and support for what was going on in their lives in terms of, you know, paid family leave and online resources and things that they could do with their families online. And, you know, to me, it's obvious it pays back in spades. That isn't why one does it. You do it because it's the right thing to do, but you don't have to make a business case for it. It's pretty obvious that the payback is huge.
Yeah. Managing with the heart makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yes.
So if we can just stay on that theme a little bit, you've read my book. So in my book, I talk about the importance of purpose for your workforce, providing the purpose. One of the things I think a leader should do, that I think it creates lasting trust in your organization if it's done right. You say something very similar in your chapter titled Trust in Purpose. You say that true leadership requires more than just charting a path forward. True leadership requires charting a path toward a more equitable, more sustainable, more compassionate future, toward purpose. You talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, you know, I think as humans, we want to know that what we do every day matters. And let's face it, we spend more time at work than anywhere else.
Yep.
And I've always believed that the job of the leader is to make meaning. People want their work to be meaningful. So as a leader, your job is to talk about the purpose of the organization you're leading and why it's important and what the benefits are, and to enlist people in engaging on that purpose. And by the way, not everybody's going to enlist. The purpose is not going to appeal to everybody, and that's fine. They can go find a place where they can work for a purpose that's meaningful to them. I think it's very important that everyone in the company be on board with the purpose. And once you have that, you really become unstoppable, right? I have found anyway that people will move mountains for leaders they trust and for a purpose in which they believe. And if they don't believe in the purpose of the company, there's not much you can do to motivate them, right? And you're going to have a hard time, especially when difficulties come or in years where you might not be able to pay as much, or when, you know, situations change and competitors come calling. It's really purpose and trust that brings a company through all of that.
No question about it. By the way, there's I just see Dave Keller just chatted. Thank you for your wise leadership all these years, Deanna.
Hi, Dave. Thank you.
Isn't that great?
There he is.
That's what purpose is all about. I want to go backwards just a little bit. You know, you're talking about education can't stop when you walk across the graduation stage. You talk about the need to bring the classroom into the workplace and the workplace into the classroom, which all kind of connotes partnerships and the like. I'm kind of curious, do you think that can happen naturally? Or do we need to incentivize? I mean, do we need to kickstart this somehow, some way to make it happen, make these partnerships happen that are going to be so desperately needed to retool the workforce down the road?
Well, I see those partnerships happening more and more, and they are springing up somewhat organically. I think the times that we're in have been a big lever to get people to think more broadly about what are my resources and how can I reach out and help the community. And that sort of leads to these public-private partnerships or education business partnerships. I think one thing we can all do, right, is talk about it more. And you see that. I think the Business Roundtable has really led in that area. You see business leaders and CEOs talking about it, writing books about it. And in some ways, necessity is the mother of invention. If McKinsey's right and we have 350 to 375 million jobs that are going to change rapidly, companies are going to have to reach out, and hopefully educational institutions will be there, and ready and waiting to help. And I know governments are helping. For example, the state of Rhode Island has worked with some of the big tech firms to develop a website where unemployed Rhode Islanders can go on and enter information about themselves. And there's an AI engine behind it that matches them with job training, with local job training. So that's an example of, community government, state government, local educational institutions and companies working together, A, to try to reemploy people, but B, for companies to find great new sources of skilled employees. So I do think we will see more things like that happening. And Rhode Island is not the only state. I know there are other states are doing similar things.
Yeah. Well, I like to think that it will come together. I do believe that necessity is the mother of invention. I do believe in that. But it will be awkward. It sure seems to me at least awkward because it's just completely different than the way we've done things in the past.
Well, one of the people often ask for advice how to get this done. And one of the things I say is, you have to be patient, right? Start small, right? Find one problem in your business that you think you could solve if you had different or better skills. So, start small, identify a problem, be patient. You're not going to get it right the first time. Reach out for help. Some things will work, some things won't. Some people will want to participate, some won't, and you have to be tolerant of that, right? But eventually you'll figure it out. We need sort of a growth mindset here, or a learning mindset inside the company. And a growth mindset says, like a toddler taking the first step, it's not going to be perfect, right? But I'll just keep doing it until I learn to walk. I think that's the mentality we need. And that's not always the mentality that we've had inside a big corporation. We haven't always had tolerance for learning by doing, because learning by doing just implies that you're going to have some things that don't work.
Yep. I'm kind of curious, and you and I both sit on corporate boards. How much of this did you share with your board when you were CEO?
Well, the board was very interested in our progress, particularly after Superstorm Sandy. They wanted to make sure that we were prepared for the next one. So I did share all along the way kind of our growth and learning journey. But you don't need board participation to make this happen. It's not expensive, right? Yeah. Community colleges are fairly inexpensive. There are lots of free courses online. What you do need is you need internally in the culture to build in this desire to, constantly improve, the desire to bring everybody along as much as possible. You can't always bring everybody, but the desire to reach out into the community and use resources that are there. So obviously, you want to bring the board along, but it's not something the board can mandate top down. It really has to come from inside the company and the corporate culture, I think. Yep,
I would agree with that. All right, so I'm going to switch gears with you, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. I'm kind of obsessed with this recently, this notion that a leader's greatness is made up by all of the small moments. When someone says, well, this is a great leader, what a visionary, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's all great. But the fact of the matter is that people really love working for leaders that do the small things right. and show that they care. And through that, I think they make a big difference. You're a person who values the importance of people. So my question for you is, do you have any practices that you incorporate, or they perhaps may seem small to you or to the person who you're interacting with, but ultimately they make a big difference? Anything that you do, or anything that someone perhaps has done for you over the years?
Well, one thing I did at Guardian, and I tried to implement this as best I could. I don't think I was always able to do it 100%. But when an employee had a death in the family and I heard about it, I would write them a handwritten note and try to figure out what charity, to donate to. And then I would write a check from my own personal account. And I always wanted them to know it was coming from me, not Guardian. And, I'd write a little note, and I'd usually sign it on behalf of me and my husband to say, look, we're reaching out to your family as a family to say, we're sorry for your loss and we're thinking about you. And if there's anything we can do, let us know. Now, sometimes I didn't know these people very well. I certainly didn't know the people who had passed on, but I had kind of a system within the company. My assistants and the people in my office would keep their ear to the ground. And if they heard of something happening, I would quickly write a note. And what I found is it doesn't have to be long. It could be 3 or 4 sentences, but it had to be handwritten and from the heart. And, I was surprised when I left Guardian how many people wrote me and said, oh, I'll never forget that you wrote me when my mother passed away, or I'll never forget how kind you were when XYZ happened. And it was a small thing. And I think it was something I passed on because somebody had done it from my family at one point in the past, and it felt meaningful. And I hope it was meaningful. I tried really hard to have it be meaningful to the people inside Guardian.
That's a powerful thing. And death it makes it even more powerful. I remember my dad worked for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he was an usher. And I remember when he passed away, the general manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates actually came to his funeral and really blew the whole family away. We just couldn't believe it. But that is also the little thing, and that's very powerful.
That means a lot.
I have one more question for you, and that is, I'd like to know what you're most grateful for.
Well, I'm grateful for a lot of things. I've obviously been blessed in a lot of ways, and I really can't take much credit for being where I am or for everything I've done. I'm grateful for all the people who've helped me along the way. But I think, and I said it in my book. My book is dedicated to the people of Guardian, because I had the opportunity to work with thousands, over 10,000 wonderful people in our offices and in our distribution system. And it was a fabulous 12 years I was at Guardian. I learned a lot. I wrote this book, and I really came to appreciate the value of every single person and what they did every day, and how dependent our success was on every person keeping the purpose in mind. So as you and I sit here today and talk about these concepts, I'm just full of gratitude for the people who made it possible.
What a blessing. What a blessing. We're fortunate. We're very fortunate to be in the positions that we've been in the past, and also still able to talk about it today in the way we do. So I'd just like to thank you so much for being on. It's been wonderful, wonderful having you here. And I hope everybody that's watching today got something out of this, because I certainly have gotten a lot out of meeting you and hearing the things that you have to say. So thank you, Deanna. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Walt. It's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you for writing your book. It was a pleasure to read it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. As I said, it's a labor of love, but I'm glad that I did it. So I'd just like to say to everybody, if you'd like to learn more about Deanna's work, check her website out at DeannaMulligan.com, DeAnna Mulligan.com. Deanna, is there any other place that you would recommend, or is that the best place for them to go?
They can also contact me if they have questions through LinkedIn.
Through LinkedIn, perfect. And you'll find out more about me and Transfluence at Walt Rakowich, and I know that's a mouthful. Walt, RAKOWICH.com. And also make sure you keep an eye out for future live streams. And until then, I encourage you to find a way to have a positive influence in the life of somebody around you, somebody you lead, somebody close to you. Maybe it's a friend. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and look forward to the next one. Deanna, thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Bye-bye.